From the crossroads of the Ozarks, it's P.I.D. Radio. Welcome. I'm Derek Gilbert.
I am Sharon Gilbert, and we're delighted to have you back listening to us, and we're glad to be back talking to you from the barn. We just got back from Israel a few days ago. We're still fighting just that jet lag that gets into your system when you've been in the air and airports for 30 plus hours.
Yeah. The way back was, I think, from the time we got to, or the time we left for the airport in Tel Aviv till getting home here was about 26 hours.
More than that, if you count from the time we got up that morning and we were touring that day with Aaron.
45 hours.
Yeah, it was a long 2 days.
Right, which didn't help the fact that I picked up a respiratory bug, but on the backside of that, thankfully, and so if I sound a little congested, it's because I am.
Yeah,
but, getting better.
I'm still a little puzzled by all that because I had a little bit of something when we were in Israel, and I didn't assume it was a respiratory bug. I thought it was just allergies because it disappeared after about 3 days.
Yeah, a lot of dust and much drier there than here, so your respiratory system adjusts accordingly. You have a history of getting sinus infections if you're not really careful. I don't. So it's possible that your body responded differently to the stimulation from the allergens than mine did. We got home just in time to get to the neti pot.
Isn't that exciting? What we've learned about this is that neti pot goes with us from now on.
Absolutely. Neti pot, lots of little salt packets. Well, thank you for taking time out of your schedule to listen or watch. If you're on YouTube, subscribe, click the bell for notifications. Thank you. But then please get our app, because that guarantees we never get canceled, especially when we start talking about things like we're going to talk about today.
Oh, you never know. Something we said, 20 years ago. We've been at this for, almost 20 years ago. Yeah. We've been going since 2005.
Things that we've done in the past have come back to bite us on the tube, but will not happen on our app. You'll find it at gilberthouse.org/app or pidradio.com/app. Thank you.
Well done.
Yeah.
It's like you've been in radio.
And for a period there back in Philadelphia in 86 and 87, was working a format called Hot Hits, where I had to do everything in 10 seconds or less, including call letters in, call letters out, temperature, time, and then whatever time was left, I could talk about the song or whatever.
And here's the thing.
10 seconds or less.
Had you actually kept a recording of those 10 seconds, I think Jamie Walden still would have had more words per second than you. Maybe.
Possibly.
No. He gets
possibly.
He packs more information into an hour presentation than I do in 5.
Yeah. Yeah, he is, when he gets going, he
really is. I love Jamie Walden. But yes, I'm so glad you're better. I thank the Lord for that. Thank the Lord for the good flights we had. They were kind of roundabout to get there and back again, but we made it. The Lord is good. And we had look, that was one of the most powerful trips of my life.
I agree. It was shorter than our previous tours, but we saw things we've not seen before. We went to, I don't know if saying real Israel in air quotes would be a way to describe it.
Well, we've been to archaeological Israel for the most part when we've traveled, not only to the archaeological sites that you and I love, but also to historical sites that aren't always on the typical Israel tour, and especially in Jerusalem. We went again to the Temple Mount, which amazed me, and we'll talk about that more in a minute. But yeah, the purpose of this, it's the Arm in Arm tour, the Solidarity tour. We wanted to show our support for Israel and the people of Israel, and I'll tell you the response was overwhelming everywhere we went. Thank you, shaking our hands, giving us hugs. We are so glad you came. Yeah.
We could tell things were different from the very first minutes that we arrived at the airport. I mean, even beyond the fact that as you arrive at Ben Gurion, you see these posters displaying the faces of the 132 who have not yet returned home from Gaza. But when you get to passport control, which normally has, 12, 18 kiosks open and lines at each one, here there were 3, and
they were moving quickly. No waiting, exactly. That was very, very strange.
Yeah.
Yeah, there were people flying in and out, but for the most part, it was extremely light traffic.
And our hotel in Jerusalem, wonderful location, by the way, block and a half from the official prime minister's residence.
Oh, wonderful people there too. Yeah. I would go back there because it was a little bit older hotel, but it was in the center of everything.
Right. walking distance from the old city, from the Mamilla Mall, from just a number
Netanyahu's
of
house.
Netanyahu's house,
which was like a block away.
Right. But most of the other guests in the hotel were people who'd been displaced from their homes in the north because they're under fire from Hezbollah rockets and RPGs. So
families.
A lot of children running around, and hotel staff, we're sorry for the no, we love it. Hey, have the children laughing and running around, fine, no problem.
They were so sweet playing on the elevators.
Yeah.
And a lot of hotel employees, especially management, would have gotten angry.
Mm-hmm.
I never saw any child, yelled at, made to feel like you did the wrong thing.
Mm-hmm.
Kids just being kids, and for the most part, very well behaved.
Yeah. So it was a very different tour for us in that regard. This was more of I think calling it a mission was more correct. Not mission in the sense that we went to proselytize, but a mission in the sense that we were there to see what's going on without the filter of the corporate media here in the West, which has a certain agenda and a narrative that it wants to put forward. And a lot of what we saw is just not being reported by the media, and some of it runs counter to the media narrative. We shouldn't be surprised by that, we Americans. This is the same media that's been telling us since 2016 that Donald Trump is a Russian agent, which we know is a lie. So why would we believe the stories that are coming out about Israel? Netanyahu, in some ways, is very much like Israel's Donald Trump. I didn't realize this. We heard this from people in Israel who are on the ground there, and political observers. They follow their politics like we follow ours. Benjamin Netanyahu is considered an outsider by a lot of Israelis because he was educated in the United States. His English is so excellent because he was more or less educated and brought up in large part here in the United States. So he's not, it's like Newt Gingrich said about Trump. They don't like him because he's not part of the club. He doesn't know the secret handshake.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So he is opposed by Israel's version of the deep state, their swamp. They don't like him. What surprised me was hearing that Netanyahu, contrary to the way he's portrayed over here, and again, shock, the media is not portraying an accurate picture. We kind of get this image of Netanyahu as a megalomaniacal dictator who's going to run roughshod over anybody who gets in his way. And frankly, some of the folks that we talked to in Israel wish he was more forceful. He's trying to work within the system, which is why judicial reform hasn't happened yet. Instead of just pushing it through and saying, okay, courts, good luck with that. Just you try to enforce your laws. He's trying to do it through the Knesset, passing laws and hoping they can get it past the judicial review, because the judiciary there can overturn any Knesset law because they don't think it's reasonable. But he's not that bull in the china shop. He's trying to get things done. He's got the support of a significant portion, if not a majority, of Israeli voters. But you've got this hardcore left that's embedded not just in the judiciary, but we found out the army, the military. And they don't tell Netanyahu what they don't want him to know.
Right. Well, that's the same here. The person in the Oval Office has very limited information. He hears, or she hears, when that day comes, what the swamp wants that person to know.
He needs to be, whoever sits in the Oval Office, male or female, just like the prime minister in Israel, any world leader has got to surround himself with people who are willing to be faithful to him and tell him what, and trust him enough to let that leader make decisions. The army in Israel was not telling Netanyahu what they were seeing on the Hamas side of the Gazan border prior to October 7th. This is what we've been told now by Israelis. There are some here in the West who think that what happened on October 7th was such a spectacular failure of Israel's defense system and intelligence services that somebody high up in the Israeli government, up to and including Benjamin Netanyahu, must have been complicit. Netanyahu knew, and he allowed it to happen so that he could justify going in and commit genocide. That's the claim, the charge that's being leveled against Netanyahu by some. What we were told is that the belief by people who support Netanyahu and people who maybe not even like Netanyahu, because at least one of the fellows who was telling us this says, I'm not sure I'd vote for him again. But they don't blame him for what happened. They say that the military was so convinced that Hamas was deterred. They're too afraid of us. They're not going to do anything. Yes, they're practicing how to breach the border fence and charge through, but no worries, it's not going to happen. They're too afraid of us. It's like, what happened leading up to Pearl Harbor in World War II. The Japanese aren't going to do anything. Yeah, they're sailing across the ocean with their carriers, but it's just an exercise. They're not going to do anything. They also depended too much on technology to monitor the border.
A lot on technology, not only the signal, the SIGINT, the signature, the signal intelligence,
right.
But the idea that the response of technology to that SIGINT, that we'd get immediate Iron Dome interception or whatever. But when you're overwhelmed by hundreds and hundreds of missiles at the rockets at the same time, Iron Dome can only take out so many of them. And think about this. Every time Iron Dome intercepts an incoming object, that's what? Maybe $500,000 that was spent?
I'm not sure. Let me, because I've seen some of those costs and I forgot what those are, but the cost of the Iron Dome rockets, the anti-missile missiles, much, much higher than the rockets that are being fabricated from water pipes.
Right.
By
This
Hamas.
This is not a laser system or some kind of a magical shield. These are anti-missile missiles.
$40,000 to $50,000 per Iron Dome missile.
So hundreds of those, thousands of those, tens of thousands probably have been used by now.
Right. And on October 7th, they launched a bunch of those to kind of overwhelm the missile defenses. And so while people were like, oh, okay, let's head for the shelters, then they charged the fences. Some of those surveillance cameras were knocked out by sharpshooters, snipers, took the cameras out. They did it on a holiday, on the last day of the Sukkot or Feast of Tabernacles holiday, holy days. So
it was, I think it's called Simchat. It is the end.
Simchat Sukkot,
yeah. It's the end of the Torah reading for a cycle. So you start all over again the next day. So it's this day of joy. Yeah.
And because it was on Shabbat, the observant Jews didn't have their phones on. So you hear missile sirens going in the south, which is not an uncommon thing for those communities down in the Negev, like Sderot, which is probably the largest of those communities right on the border with Gaza. Okay, you go for your shelter. But in some cases, the older folks that have lived there for 20, 25 years, it's like, again. And they just keep doing what they're doing. They didn't realize that this was different, that they were going to charge the fence in, how many places was the French?
It was a lot. I thought it was just a few places, but apparently it was dozens or maybe even hundreds. It was a lot of places.
Yeah. So the fences were breached, and the community that we visited, Sderot, only half a mile from the border fence. So it didn't take the terrorists very long to get to some of their target locations. But the bottom line is that the IDF and Mossad, depending on the technology and convinced that Hamas was deterred, didn't have any heightened state of readiness, despite the fact that Hamas had been openly drilling on how to do this. And I've read some other analysis by military and geopolitical analysts based in Israel, Israelis, including one fellow whose work I'm really beginning to respect, Seth Frantzman, who writes for the Jerusalem Post and Breaking Defense, among others.
Oh, yeah, I read both those.
Okay. Seth Frantzman, follow him on X. He pointed out that two of the main backers of Hamas, Qatar and Turkey, both of which are ostensibly Western allies, had been telling the Israel military hierarchy, no, Hamas is deterred. They're not going to do anything. The Egyptians likewise telling the Israelis, no, Hamas, nothing's going to happen. They're just doing this for show.
The Hamas leadership is living in your country.
Yeah, you would think that when an American ally, a Western ally, is playing host to a group that acknowledges and celebrated the murder of 1,200 civilians, that there would be some repercussions there, but nothing.
We see nothing.
Nothing. What has NATO, the United States, done to Qatar in response to this? Nothing. So the IDF overdependence on technology and AI to watch the fence instead of human eyeballs, who, humans watching through cameras or whatever would at least have seen, hey, they're coming at the border with tractors and, let's call and get some help. Didn't happen. Netanyahu, according to our sources, our friends in Israel who've been watching this situation, don't believe that the military, which apparently is so left-wing that if you're not a socialist and you're in the army, it's very difficult for you to get promoted. We were told this openly. They do not like the right-wing government headed up by, it's not just Netanyahu, the whole right wing, all of the right-wing parties, Likud, the other parties headed up by Smotrich and Ben Gvir and those guys, and forget the ultra-Orthodox
Bible bloc party that tried.
Yeah, and of course, Avi Lipkin with his Bible bloc party, which is trying to bring Jews and Christians together in a political party. They can't get any traction because, you got Christians like, the Jews don't let us proselytize, and Jews are like, Christians, we 1,800 years of bad history. They kind of do
let us, though. I mean, there was a ruling that essentially opened the door so that we can witness if we choose to.
Yeah. So, but you got the left wing embedded in key positions of power. They are not the majority in Israel, but because they're in key pressure, embedded at pressure points in the system, they've got an outsized influence on what happens in Israeli society, the judiciary and the military. And again, Netanyahu apparently is being blamed. No, not apparently. What we're seeing
here. He
is
being blamed.
Yeah, and he probably will not survive this once this war is over.
I don't think he cares.
I don't think he does either at this point. But for one thing, he's at an age and his health is such. I mean, he just had a pacemaker installed last July, that I don't think he anticipates being the head of the government for any considerable length of time once this is over. But just as Golda Meir, who was revered in the late 60s and early 70s until the Yom Kippur War, after that, her political career was over. So I don't think Netanyahu's going to survive this politically. But for us in the West, looking in from the outside without a full understanding, and we're not saying we're experts after 1 week.
Not at all.
We're just telling you what we heard from people that we met and talked to in Israel while we were there. For us in the West to say, Netanyahu must have known because we know the IDF and the Mossad and Shin Bet are the best in the world. There's no way they could have been fooled. Well, hubris.
Yeah.
Great technology and great training does not trump hubris. When you think that you're and this is what happened in 1973, well, that and Kissinger telling Meir, stand down. We see the Egyptians, mobilizing. But if you do anything, you're going to be in big trouble.
Yeah, it's probably fine.
Yeah. That's kind of what happened here, except it was Qatar and Turkey telling Israel, no, Hamas is deterred. No worries, no worries. Well, of course, Turkey wants Hamas to succeed because it's the military wing of the Muslim Brotherhood, which wants to restore the caliphate that collapsed in 1922 in Turkey.
Yep.
It's a Turkish Islamic kingdom, essentially, and Erdogan wants to restore that. Qatar is all in favor of that, apparently. So
it's ironic because we've got Erdogan who wants to restore the Ottoman Empire, and Putin who wants to restore the Byzantine Empire, who wants to restore Eastern Europe as the Christian leaders, so-called Christian leaders of the world. It's a replay of the Crimean War.
Yeah.
Where Russia was a last redoubt against the Ottomans.
It really is strange when you look at these games being played. Geopolitically, it doesn't make a lot of sense unless you look at the theopolitics. What are the spirits doing behind the scenes?
That is just it.
Chaos.
Yes. By the way, just getting down to, if you're sitting there wondering, well, where did they go? We know how people reacted. Where did they go? Well, excuse me. One of the first places we went was to Tel Aviv, to Hostage Square, but also to a hospital. And we met with soldiers who had been injured and got their perspective on what was going on, made some friends, met with a young woman who had been kidnapped at the Nova Festival. And what was it, 50 days she was held captive?
She was, released on day 50, we were told. And this was a young lady who was still using a wheelchair because now we're at day number 233 or something like that. I haven't checked in the last couple of days. But so she's been home now for 6 months, roughly. But although you could see that she was putting on a brave face, you could see it appeared to be very brittle. Now, maybe I'm reading into what I saw.
No, that's what I got too. Yeah. That is absolutely what I got. A remarkable young woman. Everyone we met, incredible. And I have to tell you also that in the hospital, you got a combination of Muslim and Jewish and secular people working. And they all get along. Doctors
and nurses, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we had some gifts that we brought along some kosher chocolate for them. And there was some non-kosher chocolate and honey that had been brought along. So gave that to the Arab nurse there. And she was the Muslim nurse. And so she was happy to take that. It was very interesting. That was really kind of awkward because we didn't have a set itinerary agenda. They didn't have a schedule. Okay, at 10 o'clock, you're going to go here and talk to this guy, and then we'll have you meet the staff over here, and then we'll go. No, it's like, okay, well, go mingle.
Mm-hmm.
What?
Yeah.
For me, that's really uncomfortable.
I know it was for most everybody in the group. I didn't have any problem with it. A few of us had worked in hospitals in the past, right. So it just felt like old home to me.
Yeah,
walking around a hospital.
I've told people, mentioned this on the Hear the Watchman Zoom call that I did earlier this week to kind of share what we had learned. The hardest thing I've had to do in my adult life to earn a living was outside sales, because I had to go in and talk to guys one-on-one. Getting up in front of a crowd and saying, hey, guess what? Sharing that knowledge. I mean, that's me as a first grader coming home from school, having learned something new. Hey, Mom, guess what? So that's easy. Going into somebody's office and saying, hi, I'm so-and-so, I represent such and so, and we'd like your business. That was difficult.
Personal space.
Right. Going into a hospital room of a young man sitting there with pieces of his body missing.
Mm-hmm.
That was hard.
Yeah.
But as you say, they were all very thankful that we were there. I think they were curious and puzzled. Why are you here?
People here.
You came all the way to Israel. Why are you at a rehabilitation center?
We want to understand a lot of viewpoints.
Yeah. And we didn't see anybody there who was angry.
No, we didn't.
The government sent me into this stupid, pointless work. We didn't hear any of that. It's like they seem to be in very good spirits. Morale seemed to be very high, even those who were dealing with some very, very serious injuries, wheelchair bound, and again, recuperating from traumatic injuries. And again, finding that young lady there who'd been kidnapped from the Nova Music Festival and having the injured soldier describe her, yeah, she's the queen of the rehab center.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Well, I think that was that he admires her.
Yeah.
Very pretty young woman too. So
that might
admiration might go in.
Yeah.
But a remarkable young woman. And then, as I said, we went to Hostage Square, which is a large area in Tel Aviv that's dedicated to all of those who are still missing, still being held. So you have the large Shabbat table that has all of these empty chairs. You had a large area as if they were an audience of empty chairs with faces on them and names and various tents of family members who are trying to get their people home. And so talking to them was really, I don't know that powerful even describes it. It in some ways was almost surreal, because I thought, we're talking to these individuals and they are clearly hurting, but it's a beautiful sunny day. We're in a part of the country that very rarely gets anything. You might have a siren alarm now and then, but Tel Aviv, for the most part, has been untouched.
Yeah, looked like life going on as usual. We went to a very wonderful place for lunch, and it's like, okay, this looks like any American mall food court in a high-end shopping center. So you wouldn't know that a war was on if you were just dropped in there unaware. So, yeah, the other thing at the Hostage Square that was really striking was the replica of the Hamas tunnel.
We have video of that.
Yeah.
We took a lot of photographs, a lot of video. Derek did some on-site reports that will go into a longer format eventually, but some of those were on 5 and 10. So if you've been watching 5 and 10, then you got those reports. For those of you who've been to Israel with us, those who went last year, Ron Silberman met us in Tel Aviv.
That was wonderful. Got a chance to connect with Ron and talk with him. Had lunch with him that day. That was really, really great to see him. Also, Kuti Ben David called. He was leading a tour group in the Galilee. They were going to Tiberias and Capernaum and other sites up there.
I know. I thought, why couldn't we go to these places? It's because we went there with a different purpose. That's why.
Right. We could have gone to those places, but we wanted to go other areas, and Lipkin Tours facilitated that. So, yeah, the replica Hamas tunnel was striking because as you walked into it, it's creepy, but the difference is that when we walked in, we knew that as we kept walking, we would come out the other side. Yeah. The people who went in there back in October, again, 130 out of the 340.
Right. Not knowing if they would ever come out of those.
Yeah. Some of them may be, and this may be one of the reasons, just to left turn for just a little bit, Israel has captured, and did this while we were still in Israel, they captured the Rafah border crossing between Gaza and Egypt. Apparently, they found that there are 50 tunnels connecting the Sinai to Gaza at Rafah.
Yeah.
And it's possible that some of the higher-ups, it's believed that Yahya Sinwar, the Gaza leader for Hamas, is in Khan Yunis. He's moved back out of Rafah to Khan Yunis. But there's some are speculating, yeah, maybe he's over in the Sinai now because you got those tunnels there. That may be why Israel went there to take that crossing in that area.
Netanyahu is in a very difficult position, as we said earlier. And it reminds me a little bit of Joshua's position when the Lord said, when you go to the following cities, they are harem. You have to destroy everything. Don't take anything with you. Everything is to be destroyed, killed, burned, whatever. It's not to be left because they have aspects that are beyond redemption. I always like to think in those cases that the innocent, if you want to put it that way, especially young people who were victims of those wars, went to be with the Lord because they didn't know right hand from left.
Yeah.
Same as the children who have been taken and very likely have lost their lives because there are stories that, frankly, most of those hostages may have already met with their end. But Joshua did not follow instructions always. And because of that, some of the Canaanites were not destroyed as he'd been told to destroy them. This is what Netanyahu is trying to do. He is trying to take out Hamas. That is a terrorism unit. That is a philosophy. That is a way of life. It's very difficult to destroy a way of life, a belief system.
Right. It's especially difficult because of the way Hamas chooses to fight. Had some exchanges on social media over the last couple of weeks from people, some Christian, who believe that Israel is waging a war of genocide. Israel has been trying to get civilians out of the way. Statistics done by observers who are not Hamas, in other words, not statistics quoted from the Hamas Ministry of Health, or Gaza Ministry of Health, which is Hamas, show that the ratio of civilian casualties to militant casualties is about 1-to-1, which is much, I mean, that's tragic that any civilian at all would be caught in the crossfire, but it's much, much lower than in any even marginally comparable urban warfare setting in the last century.
Well, that's just it. When you think that Hamas is using the people as their shields.
That's the other thing. The ratio would be even lower if Hamas wasn't hiding underneath hospitals and mosques and schools and churches.
And Israel is doing its best to drop leaflets, to go house to house, to make phone calls, trying to get the innocent people to move out of the way when they're about to do an operation. The danger there is that it warns Hamas.
It does. And it also, because Israel has not been willing to go to the extent that, for example, when the Iraqi army went into Mosul, and this was an analysis again by Seth Fransman, who I mentioned earlier, when the Iraqi army went into Mosul, which became sort of a second capital for the Islamic State after 2015, 2016, they would surround an area and then basically close the news. And everything inside, unless you were obviously a civilian, you might as well consider yourself a combatant. And that's how they crushed the Islamic State in Mosul. In Gaza, because Israel is saying, okay, we're going into Eastern Rafah, move out now, so 300,000 people will evacuate. Many of them probably Hamas militants. They've done the same thing in the Zaytun neighborhood, in Jabalia, in central and northern Gaza. And we learned while we were in Israel that Zaytun neighborhood, Israel had to return now twice after initially cleaning it out. They were in there for the third time, Jabalia in the second time, or maybe it's the other way around. Maybe Zaytun the second time, Jabalia the third time. But the point is, It's like playing a deadly game of whack-a-mole. We clear an area of Hamas, we pull our troops back out, we go somewhere else. Hamas moves into the area we just cleaned out, like the Al-Shifa Hospital, where we saw that tour back in November of last year, where Jonathan Conricus, the former IDF spokesperson, led the media in there and showed, okay, look, automatic weapons here stored in a room with the MRI machine. What are they doing here? And here, then come March, they had to go back in and take out another 500 or 600 because Hamas had moved back into the hospital complex after Israel left. Hamas knows that the longer they drag this out and hang out of the hostages are really their only leverage at this point. The longer they hang on to the Israeli hostages, who, again, most of whom may already be deceased, the more world pressure increases on Israel. Hamas doesn't care. Hamas does not face the kind of world pressure that Israel is facing. And this is spiritual because it makes no logical sense. The longer they can drag this out, if they start releasing a hostage here and a hostage there, it's like, oh, okay, well, maybe we've got more. And then the families put pressure on the government. The world puts pressure on Israel's government. They drag it out. And as Fransman pointed out, especially if the aged leader of the Palestinian Authority, who controls the Arab territories in Judea and Samaria, Mahmoud Abbas, he's 88 years old. He's not in the greatest health. If and when he dies, if Hamas is still standing, they can go to the Palestinian Arabs in the West Bank, Judea and Samaria, and say, look, we got these concessions. We got hundreds of your freedom fighters released by the Israelis. We should rule in... And then Israel would have this death cult on its southern border and in the heartland of Israel, Judea and Samaria. And that's what Fransman thinks they're playing for. And of course, because they've got the backing of Turkey and Qatar, they may just be able to pull it off.
Well, the Lord has his plans.
Yes.
And the enemy has their plans. And I know which side that I think will win. In fact, I know it's already won.
Be on the right side of history.
Be on the right side of history. We're going to take a break, and then we're coming back on the other side of the break.
Yes, more P.I.D. Radio ahead. Summer reading season is just around the corner. We want to help you get ready.
You can buy fiction, you can buy nonfiction through the Gilbert House store, whichever you want. All of our books are 40% off. 40%.
That includes all 8 novels of the Red Wings saga.
Book 9 is coming, probably early summer.
My 2 novels, and then, of course, all of our nonfiction stuff, including our most recent books, Giants, Gods, and Dragons, The Second Coming of Saturn, and Veneration, a deep dive into the cult of the Nephilim.
April and May, you get 62 days.
Absolutely.
No, 61. April only has 30.
Regardless, through the end of May, 40% off on all of our books at the Gilbert House store. Available only online. Go to gilberthouse.org/store. You'll find all the prices slashed on our books, 40% off. gilberthouse.org/store. And thank you for your prayers and support.
God's creation is full of mysteries. What were the giants in the scripture? Did dinosaurs roam the earth in the days of Noah? Are we alone in the universe? Join speakers Derek Gilbert, Rudy Landa, Michael Hoggart, Greg Patton, Mac Dominic, Josh Davis, and Micah Van Huss to explore the topics your Sunday school teacher didn't talk about at the Mysteries of the Bible Verse event in Cincinnati, Ohio, June 7th and 8th.
Welcome back to P.I.D. Radio. I'm Derek Gilbert.
I am Sharon Gilbert, and we have mail call. We want to thank Ann Crossland, who sent us this delightful stuffed bunny for all of our bunny trails. So it's now on my desk here at the podcast desk, and I can see this little. I'm going to keep your card next to it. So every time a bunny starts hopping, and they do, boy, do they ever. I think this is a brilliant idea. Ann said in her note that they use this in their Sunday school classes. So
whenever there's a rabbit trail, you bring out the bunny and hold up the bunny. Bunny trail,
warning ahead. If we ever do a video version of PID Radio, you'll be able to see the bunny trail. In fact, we may take it over to the Unraveling. We want to remind you also that we are going back to Israel next spring. So you can go and you can see those archaeological sites. You can go to the Galilee. You can see the Valley of the Shadow of Death with us.
Yep. Our special guests on the Iron and Myth tour of Israel, Pastor Doug Van Dorn, author of Giants, Sons of the Gods, Dr. Judd Burton, author of Interview with the Giant, Ethno-Historical Notes on the Nephilim, and explorer, adventurer, filmmaker, author, all-around Renaissance man, Timothy Alberino, author of Birthright. All three joining us next spring.
That's going to be such an incredible tour, and it's sort of triangulating this or quadrangling it or strangling it from 3 or 4 different viewpoints plus the viewpoints of our guides. So it's going to be quite a tour, and you don't want to miss it. And I'll tell you what, this is the kind of tour that could fill up buses really fast. Yeah. It's not us, it's those guys.
So if you want more information, you'll find it at gilberthouse.org/travel. There's a link to the Lipkin Tours website. And I know some people have asked us because the dates on the tour still show November. The dates on our website, March 25th through April 3rd, are correct. Lipkin Tours has been dealing with a lot. I mean, Aaron is still walking around with a rifle. A
rifle and a smile on his face.
Yeah. So
we'll tell you more about that in a minute.
Yeah. So anyway, gilberthouse.org/travel.
Also, while you are at gilberthouse.org, go to our store, gilberthouse.org/store, because we still have the sale through the end of this month. It is, how much?
40% off on all books.
That is crazy.
Yes. And the link to the really, really clean freeze-dried food. Ooh. Freeze-dried food is not just for prepping anymore, although it's obviously important for that.
It's just for good health.
Yes. Simply Clean Foods. Chance Gibson and his team there, both with foods that you can prepare for everyday use, but also some really excellent coffee.
I like their coffee a lot.
Vacuum packed, so it doesn't come in contact with air, which causes it to age and lose flavor. But we got links right there on the front page of the Gilbert House Ministry store, gilberthouse.org/store.
Indeed. Boy, I was trying to think if there's anything else other than, of course, you told them at the very beginning, please download our app, and you can also converse with others. If you just want to talk about all our bunny trails or whatever, you can go to our app. There's a conversation area, top right, little conversation bubbles, and you can go in and you can converse. I've not been in there lately because I can't remember my password.
Oh.
So I've got to just delete my account and then start again. It kept sending me, and this is just me. For whatever reason, I thought I'd used this one password. Apparently I didn't. Anyway, I'll figure it out. So if you've asked me a question, I generally don't answer because the device that I read all of that on in the evening is an old iPad that you have to type on the screen, and it just drives me crazy to have to do that. And I would like to have an actual keyboard in front of me, so I was trying to set it up on a newer iPad with a keyboard, and it kept saying wrong password. So anyway, that's what's going on with that. But
I'll go in through the dashboard and I can reset your password for you.
Oh, you're a good man.
Yeah. So that way we can get that caught up.
See if I could access it because I'm an admin. I could go in and I could do it, but I can't.
Yeah. You are an admin though. You could.
I know.
Yeah.
But I can't get in because
gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll fix that. We'll check that out.
So
there was a question here, so we can kind of address this.
Oh yeah.
Actually, there was one that came in just before we left for the Israel tour, and we kind of addressed that on that edition of PID Radio, which was the bill passed by the House that went to the Senate to make anti-Semitic speech basically decriminalize anti-Semitic speech. We talked about that. That's really...
We did. And I think that we're going to see more and more countries that to make themselves look like, see, we're not anti-Semites. They're going to pass things like that, but really it's just a free speech limit.
Yeah.
In fact, there are a number of well-known individuals. I'm not going to name anybody, but we're talking celebrities and politicians and all sorts of high-profile people who are making noises about free speech being limited because it gives us more freedom.
Yeah. Hate speech is dangerous. It's so dangerous we need to limit it. Freedom, it's very clever terminology. Freedom of expression. You can express yourself just so long as you don't say anything hateful.
There's a line...
Which is how we define the word hate.
There's a line that Loki has in the Avengers movie, and he says, "I'm here to free you." And of course, Samuel L. Jackson's character says, "You're not here to free us at all." "Oh no, I am. I'm here to free you from freedom."
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because that is really hard. You'll be happier when your choices are gone.
Yeah, that is a sad, but often, all too often, accurate assessment of human nature.
Mm-hmm.
Free will, which we as Christians are given, means we have to think about our actions and how consistent they are with the command to love others as we love ourselves. Instead, we often want a list of rules. Just tell me what not to do.
Mm-hmm.
Give me a list of rules to follow.
Yeah.
And that, of course, is what...
Because freedom it's
hard. It requires thinking.
Difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just tell me what you want me to do and what rules to follow. So that is... Yeah.
That's where we're headed.
Yeah. How we're getting into this era where young kids in school today, college kids, are convinced that saying something they don't like is hate speech, and that's violence, whereas fiery but mostly peaceful, actual destruction of property and punching Nazis, that's legitimate protest.
Mm-hmm.
But if you say something they dislike, that's violence. Actual violence is not violence, that's protest. Like, are you mental?
Did you ever read 1984? Do you realize you're fulfilling it?
Yeah. Orwell was maybe not a prophet, but a seer. That's for sure.
He saw what was going on around him.
There was another question here that came in from that same person, though, which I think is worth just touching on very quickly. And we'll try to do this going forward. If you got questions for us through our app, you can address those questions for Derek, questions for Sharon. Is Donald Trump anti-Semitic?
Question for Sharon. What is your password?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Wrong.
Is he anti-Semitic? He's got a son-in-law, for goodness sake.
Who's an Orthodox Jew, right? And his daughter is converted. So, no. Quite frankly, no. The irony of this whole question of anti-Semitism is it's bizarre that we're supposed to oppose Israel because they're committing genocide, but if you dare speak out against George Soros for funding district attorneys in cities like Chicago, St. Louis, LA, San Francisco, who are New York, who are subverting the rule of law by refusing to prosecute violent crime. If you dare criticize Soros for that, you're anti-Semitic. What? I mean, what? In what way is he Jewish? Ethnically, I suppose, but he's certainly not living like someone who believes in Hashem.
No, he doesn't.
So anyway, it's language is being weaponized. I think we as, well, just human beings, but as Christians just need to say, look, you can call me names because you're going to anyway. Mm-hmm. And I don't care anymore.
Anti-Semitism is essentially speaking out hatefully against the Shemites.
Which technically would include Arabs as well.
Yeah, I know. Isn't that interesting?
Right.
But you can be anti-Japhethic.
Mm-hmm.
So Japhethites.
Right. Which would be us.
Mm-hmm.
European descendants.
Yep. Sorry, you're white.
Yeah.
I can say whatever I want to about you. And okay. And then there are those who say that Jews are white adjacent.
Mm-hmm.
What's that good? What?
Yeah.
Okay, here's an idea. All three of those brothers came from the same dad.
Right.
How about if we just don't say anything about anybody? If we judge people on their actions,
right, not
on their skin tone.
Yeah. No, well, again, that's been flipped on its head here in the last few years. If you don't consider skin color now, you're racist. What? Are you saying Martin Luther King was a racist? Shut up. That's why.
Well,
yes.
let's talk more about where we went.
Visiting the communities in the South. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. We went to the site of the Nova Music Festival, which was in this park-like setting, and it originally had not been planned for there.
No. That I did not know until just before we went to Israel.
I was surprised. The location was changed just a few days before the event.
Right. It was...
near Tel Aviv, I think originally.
Yeah. 364 of the partygoers there were killed. Another 40 were taken hostage. This was... this was just astonishing. But you're right. It was not supposed to be there originally. Looking up where it was supposed to be prior to this. This is an annual event. It began, the music, by the way, is called trance music, a trance music festival. This is a very repetitious electronic style of music that's intended to induce an altered state of consciousness.
Oh, like some church services. Huh?
Yep.
I'm sorry, but singing the same chorus with, 2 chords to it 27 times is trance-inducing.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yes, it is.
Very interesting.
Think about it. You're standing there with your eyes closed oftentimes. You're singing the exact same thing over and over and over again. I don't like that. Give me the old hymns.
Right.
Give me something that's got, some good scripture for the lyrics. I know that there are a lot of good repetitive choruses that are used in churches that also have scripture within them, but I'm just not a big fan of having over and over and
something
over.
That involves a little more actual engagement, intellectual engagement than just, The festival wasn't even supposed to continue to October 7th. It was supposed to end on the 6th.
Oh.
So not only was it not supposed to be at this location originally, it was only extended to continue until the 7th, a day or two before the event. So it's unlikely that Hamas knew that this was even going to be there.
I think they considered it a bonus. I really don't think those young men, and many of them had, according to what I've read, were probably on some sort of hallucinogenic substance, so that they were not likely to feel any remorse whatsoever for what they were about to do.
No. Security services found it unlikely Hamas had advanced knowledge of the festival. The festival had been planned to run until October 6th, only recently extended to 7 October. So it's likely that when they came through the fence and found this soft target with a couple thousand kids there attending, especially at 6:30 in the morning, considering a lot of them had probably stayed up very late the night before, most of them were still just waking up and not really alert in what was going on. They heard the sirens going off, like, well, okay, we're near the Gaza border, no big deal. Hey, what are those paragliders coming in?
Yeah.
And then as they tried to find places to hide, the Hamas terrorists coming in on motorcycles and pickup trucks began surrounding the people who were trying to get away. And what was really tragic is that the response that Israelis who live along the Gazan border are trained to, their trained response when they hear those sirens is to get to a public missile shelter, which are all over along this border. I mean, it's really, we'll talk about the playground in Sderot in a minute. But by going into these shelters, they became sitting ducks.
Yeah.
Because you'd have, 20 people crammed into this little bus stop sized missile shelter, a guy with a grenade or an automatic weapon go in and just suddenly take out a bunch of people all at once.
Yeah, and that is what happened over and over again. There were some stories of heroism, one story of people who were inside one of these shelters, and a young man again and again and again threw out a grenade. Grenade was thrown in. He threw it out 7 times.
Yep.
But the last time he couldn't kick it out soon enough, and so he fell on it.
Yeah, and sadly, that then allowed the terrorists to come in and shoot whoever was left. The only survivors in that missile shelter were the ones who were underneath underneath dead people.
Yeah, we heard some truly horrific stories.
Yeah.
I realize that all sides in a war suffer, but the aggressors that began all of this was the behavior that so incensed Israel.
Yeah.
You talked about the children's the playground.
Mm-hmm.
Playgrounds in these Negev communities are hardened. Mm-hmm. The areas where the children play include little cartoon-like shelters.
Mm-hmm.
There was a large caterpillar, which was a long shelter.
Yeah, made of reinforced concrete.
Mm-hmm.
Because children in Sderot, which at its closest point is only half a mile from the border fence, they've only got 15 seconds when those sirens go. They've got 15 seconds to get to a shelter.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have time to get to a shelter in 15 seconds, and given our age, I doubt you or I would have made it to a shelter in 15 seconds.
Not.
Yeah,
probably not.
Okay.
This is to avoid the shrapnel
right.
that happens when Iron Dome takes out the incoming target.
Right. The playground we visited had been hit, according to our guide, by a rocket on October 7th, and you could still see the shrapnel pockmarks in the on the face of that big concrete caterpillar. There was also another one that was like a tree decorated with Smurfs on it. So the children in those communities know that when they hear the siren at the playground, go into the caterpillar and stay away from the door.
Mm-hmm.
It's how do you normalize something that is that abnormal? But that's what the Israelis.
But that's what these children are going to have to deal with. But again, on all sides, no matter where you are, if you are suffering because of this war, a child's psyche is also at risk. We visited the site of the police station that is now gone and was essentially taken out by a tank, I think.
Yeah, the way the story developed, the police station in the town of Sderot, which is a town of about 35,000, was surrounded by Hamas militants, and they were overrun. The police station was stormed, and 30 people inside the police station were killed. 70 people in all in Sderot were killed. Then the Hamas terrorists barricaded themselves inside the police station because help had arrived, but there was a sniper who had positioned himself, a Hamas sniper positioned himself on an apartment building on the other side of the street. This police station's in the middle of a residential neighborhood.
From it,
yeah. And as Israeli police and military came to help, the sniper was taking them out and killed 15 Israelis from the roof of the building across the street. We were told that an off-duty soldier or police officer,
I don't know which one.
We heard
but an off-duty gentleman who wanted to take out the sniper, but had no he had a handgun.
Right,
but that was it.
Yeah, I think he was a police officer. He found a soldier in the area and said, "Give me your gun, give me your rifle, your M16." And the soldier didn't want to do it. I'll get in trouble. The regulations, basically, hang the regulations. Give me your gun.
I like the way Yishai put it. We don't know how, but somehow he got the gun.
Yeah. I could just look over there. What? Pow. It might have been something like that. Or look, we need to get the sniper. However it happened. He got into the next building over and got up on a third floor apartment and then leaned out of a bathroom window and shooting toward the roof of the next building a good, 60, 70 feet away with no scope on that M16.
And not a great angle. It's the best you could get.
There's a mural on the wall of that building now that commemorates this, and it depicts an angel leaning out of that window
with a crossbow,
with a bow and arrow.
Oh, that's right. It is a bow and arrow, not a crossbow.
And it was really astonishing. But again, because the Hamas terrorists had overrun the police station, were barricaded inside, and that station was reinforced. The decision was finally made by the mayor and the local military commander to send in a tank. So they brought an IDF tank in there, and they basically shelled the building and brought the building down on top of the terrorists.
So there's nothing left there but little bits of debris, and it is going to be made into a memorial. What I found I think, well, again, using the term powerful over and over again, it just loses its true meaning to me because it's beyond words. The mural of the angel leaning out the window, that is a reminder to those of us who want to consider the theopolitics beyond the geopolitics, that warfare in the angelic realm was taking place at the same time and is taking place now.
Mm-hmm.
So when that man leaned out of that window, for all we know, there was an angel aiming that shot.
Mm-hmm. The angels in their courses, the stars in their courses fought against Sisera, the book of Judges. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was something. And we only heard that story because we happened to run into the deputy mayor of the city of Sderot.
Who was amazed we were there.
Yeah. Why are you here? Where are you from? Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
The site of the police station is just now a bunch of twisted rebar coming out of what would have been the foundation of the police station, decorated now with Israeli flags and little commemorative cards, flowers, candles, and things that have been left for the soldiers. And it will be turned into a memorial site.
Yeah. We went to Ofakim, which is another kibbutz that was so hard hit. It is the site of the amazing grandma, the amazing cooking grandma.
Rachel Edry. She and her husband David, who has since passed, had their home invaded. This was another area where we were just talking with average people. Our guide was translating for us. They were showing us, yes, this is where this happened, and you can see the bullet holes in the walls, and you can see the hole in the wall here, and you can see the, all the damage done to the buildings around. When and what was remarkable was, I don't know if that was her grandson or a neighbor, but anyway, we were shown video from the security camera on the front of their building, showing the terrorists trying to break in and
shooting the dog.
The dog was trying to get away.
Prior to this, the lead up to all of this, there were all of these work permits that were given to Gazans.
Yeah.
And some of those individuals were actually spying on Israel. They were spying on the farmers that they were working for, working in town. They were spying on people there. They were keeping track of how many were in a house, what their movements were, and whether or not they had dogs.
Right.
Because a dog can alert you to incoming intruders. As we well know, I can tell you that every night almost that those dogs bark at something.
Yep.
And in the video that we watched, this CCTV video in Ofakim, the dog wasn't threatening them.
No.
The dog just wanted to get back into his fence to be with his people, his humans, and they killed him.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, Rachel
Edry. This they were in their home, and 5 armed men. And you can find this story at the Book of Knowledge, Wikipedia. 5 armed men, Hamas terrorists, broke into their home, and of course they were claiming to be police, but they weren't. Rachel, who's pretty savvy, apparently she runs the canteen at a local army base, where she's known as the mother of the soldiers. So she's used to being around young men. And so she started, and she knows Arabic. So she was singing in Arabic to the hostage takers. She got them engaged in some conversation. She offered to bake them cookies, gave them Coke, gave them water. And by staying calm and joking with them, she bought time.
And she was able to go to the window now and then and signal to her son, who was gathering forces, and letting them know how many men were inside with her. Right.
Her son's name, Eviatar. And by signaling to them and keeping these guys fed and calm and, how about some bread? I can, whatever she was doing. She stalled them for 20 hours while her son, the police officer, got counter-terror forces together. And because she signaled through the window, holding up 5 fingers, there are 5 guys in here, they knew what to expect. And Eviatar telling the counter-terror guys, here's the layout of the house, here's where she is, and here's how you get there. They were able to come in and neutralize the terrorists and rescue her and her husband, David, who again, we were told just 2 weeks ago, just the week before we were there, passed away from a heart attack. But Rachel from Ofakim, an amazing story. We also saw the elderly fellow there with a walker.
Yeah.
He looked like somebody that you might see at my mother's nursing home.
Yeah.
Who'd been another captive who was released by Hamas, and he's now back in his community.
So people who are trying their best to recover and find a sense of stability and normality in, frankly, in the midst of warfare that isn't normal at all. When you and I and our group were in some of these areas, but especially when we were at the festival site, Raim, is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Raim. Our guide Yeshai had said, if you hear noises like explosions, it's our guys. It's the good guys.
Yeah.
And we did several times, and you could see smoke, off on the horizon. It was close enough that it was like almost like a few farms away out here in the Ozarks for us. But we didn't. It never bothered me. I had, and others in the group said the same thing. This amazing sense of peace, as if the Lord's hand was upon us the entire time, and nothing was going to happen that He didn't allow. Look, there's no safer place to be than in the Lord's hand.
Right. And if He's going to call you home, be called home from Israel.
I know.
Yeah. It was remarkable as we went to the overlook in Sderot, where you look to the south and you see Gaza, and you see the border fence literally just half a mile away. That fence, by the way, was never intended to be a barrier for a mass bull rush, which is what happened on October 7th. It was intended to stop small groups, 1, 2, 6, trying to, scale the fence, but charging the fence with front-end loaders and tractors and bulldozers. The fence was not designed to withstand that. The Israeli government probably going to rethink that going forward. But anyway, it was really weird for us as Americans and Brits and Kiwis. Sandy and Neil from New Zealand joining us there. To hear the explosions in the distance and see the columns of smoke popping up from Rafah as that continued. Yes, it is tragic that there are civilians who are caught in harm's way in Gaza. And yes, we do pray for the innocents in Gaza who are caught up in this.
Absolutely.
And caught up in this cycle of hatred. There are people on both sides pointing fingers. Well, they started it. They continued it. They did the most recent thing. They are stealing our land. They're stealing our homes. Whatever. Ultimately, behind the scenes, it's the enemy, capital E enemy, the principalities and powers and cosmic rulers over this present darkness, trying to stoke that hatred because this long supernatural war is about the land of Israel. It is about not the geopolitical entity of Israel, but the land of Israel and the Mount of Assembly, Zion, the Temple Mount. That's what this is all about. Those who think that Christians who support Israel are idolizing Israel or Netanyahu or the Jews, I'm sorry, you are misreading the situation, at least as far as we're concerned. They need Jesus just like we need Jesus. There is no other path to the Father except through Jesus Christ. We pray for our friends in Israel, Messianic, Orthodox, secular. There is no special dispensation for any group of people to get into heaven. Absent Jesus, we are all lost. But we understand when you've got a choice between one group of people who rejected Messiah the first time, but who Scripture says in Romans chapter 11, God has not abandoned the people that He foreknew. And Paul pointing out that I am an Israelite of the tribe of Benjamin. And God will bring them back to Him someday. You can't get around Romans chapter 11. You can't get around Zechariah chapter 12, when God will pour out a spirit of grace on the house of David and Jerusalem. And they will look on me, on Him whom they have pierced, and mourn.
Exactly. And the Davidic throne covenant is not dependent upon any human behavior.
Absolutely.
It's a one-sided covenant. God promised he would have a descendant of David on the throne, implying that the idea is still that it is, frankly, an Israeli throne, because those were the people he carved out to show the nations what his plan was for mankind. And through the Lord Jesus Christ, who was born as a Jew, a descendant of David.
Yep.
Are you going to tell Jesus he can't be a Jew? I'm sorry, that he's fully human, fully divine, and it is that fully human part that gives him the blood covenant right to that throne. It's that fully divine part that made him able to rise again and be perfect in all of his behaviors.
Yeah.
To be our perfect sacrifice. You can't get around the promises to Israel. So saying that this group or that group replaces Israel, no, I'm sorry. Israel is still part of all of this.
Yeah.
And we stood on the Temple Mount, and we are running out of time, but if you listen to Gilbert House Fellowship tomorrow morning, we will probably wax eloquent, well, maybe not so eloquent, but we'll blather about that part of our experience as well, because that and going to Mount Azazel.
Yeah.
I was so interested in finding that, because Azazel plays a part in the Red Wing Saga. Didn't know that, did you?
I didn't. Spoiler.
Oh, spoiler alert.
A tease anyway.
Tease indeed.
Well, and maybe we'll get into Romans 11 tomorrow, because I think rather than read all of Romans 11, because that could take another hour to just unpack that, I think when you read Romans chapter 11, 9 through 11, but especially chapter 11, you just come away with, it's like, okay, God saw that the Jews would reject him, but that a day is coming when they will be restored. So I think that we as Christians who are trying to say, well, God didn't foresee that the Rothschilds would be involved in restoring Israel. Really?
Gosh, just historically, the Lord's used a lot of imperfect people.
A lot of pagans, too.
A lot of pagan
Cyrus,
people.
Artaxerxes, yeah. Well, anyway, that will be a topic for another day, perhaps tomorrow morning, perhaps next week. But let it be said that this was a very important tour, and we're very, very glad that we went.
So glad.
We look forward to getting back to Israel when it's peaceful.
We really do. We love going over there, and I know many of you wanted to go for various reasons. You were unable to go with us, but you went there in spirit and you prayed for us, and we really, really appreciate that. We do want to ask one special prayer. Just pray for the whole Skywatch TV operation. They're still dealing with, well, frankly, grief. Getting past the grief for the loss of Tom Horn, but also, how do you replace someone who was totally unique? Yeah,
there's only one Tom Horn.
I know.
Yeah.
So pray for that, for the entire family and for the company, because I can just see it on Joe's face anytime. He doesn't like to ask for special prayer, but he's still trying to figure out I think originally, how do I be Tom Horn? No, you're Joe Horn. Be Joe Horn.
Yeah. And let's see, what else we got going on this week? Gilbert House Fellowship tomorrow, and the View from the Bunker tomorrow night. I'm going to use some video that Mike Kerr is graciously allowing me to repurpose the Zoom call that I did Thursday night for their Thursday night Hear the Watchman Fellowship. And I will add some B-roll from the trip, so that when you watch the video, as I describe where we went, you can see some of the sites that I'm describing. Yeah,
and we've got a number of upcoming conferences and visits, and one of those we want to tell you about right now. Make sure that if you are in the area, that you can go to Blue Eye and meet us there, because we're going to be back on Baker on the 30th.
Right, and that is open to the public. So the recording session, and we'll be talking about the Israel trip that we just took on the 30th, and I need to add that to our calendar, but it'll be on the app and also gilberthouse.org under the calendar there. You can get there by, say, 10:30-ish. They usually start around 11 o'clock. There's a nice little Mexican restaurant there inside Grace Street.
Great food.
So plan on having lunch and join us as we describe what we're going to, what we saw, and we will talk with the producers down there about maybe incorporating some of the video that we shot into those future episodes of the Jim Bakker Show. Also, coming up just a few weeks away, the Mysteries of the Bible Verse live event in Cincinnati, actually Hebron, Ohio.
I know.
Hebron, Kentucky, it's south of the Ohio River. But right there at the airport
is in Hebron.
Yes.
Not Hebron, sorry. Hebron.
Yeah.
I want to always say the Israeli pronunciation. No, it's Hebron, Kentucky.
Yep. And they will have some fascinating discussions. Giants, UFOs, secret societies. What is the Council of Elohim?
Mm-hmm.
Did angels rule the nations after the Tower of Babel?
Good.
Yeah.
Good
some
stuff.
fascinating conversations there. Rudy landed, Pastor Mike Hoggard, many others. And
including
information. You? Yeah, and I'll be speaking twice. I'll be the keynote speaker on Saturday.
Ooh.
So you can find out more
Aren't
at
you
our
special?
site. Yeah, pretty sweet.
You're cute.
So looking back. I'll be talking about giants in the Bible on Friday. Then on Saturday, unmasking Lucifer.
Ooh.
The fallen angel more dangerous than Satan.
You know, I'm rereading, and we'll need to go here in a second. I'm rereading for like the third time the Paradise Lost by Milton.
Mm-hmm.
It's, once you get used to the way it's written, it's like an easy read. At least it is for me. But I find it fascinating the way the various actors in the rebel realm are portrayed. It's brilliant. Seriously, it is so well written. And I have not read it yet, but Vicki Joy Anderson has written her own version of that. And I've got to get a hold of that because I'm betting that that's also super brilliant.
Yeah.
She is super brilliant.
She absolutely is. Well, again, follow us on social media. You'll find the links at gilberthouse.org or pidradio.com. Our app, of course, is the easiest way to do all of that. We also have a Telegram channel.
Yeah, it's
Forgot
brand
to mention
new.
that. I will put the link in the show notes so you can follow us on Telegram. We'll be posting links to our stuff there, as well as news items that we think are important. And until next time, I'm Derek Gilbert.
I'm Sharon Gilbert, and for Grace and Glory, who are playing in the backyard. Bye-bye, everybody.
P.I.D. Radio is produced by Gilbert House and released under Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License. Follow us online, Twitter @P.I.D. Radio, or the P.I.D. Radio page at Facebook. Join us each week for our online Bible study, the Gilbert House Fellowship, online at gilberthouse.org.